This is the Hyundai Kona in this surging small SUV segment. And on Autogefühl, your number one resource for in-depth car reviews and your number one community to discuss cars, we will get you everything you need to know about exterior, interior and the driving experience. And I can tell you there will be some surprises. Of course, in full HD, full screen and full length. Let's go! Isn't this a nice evening light? Look at how the front is illuminated by the very soft sunlight right now we have. Well, what about the design? You can also get optional LED lights. Those ones would be in the lower part then. Those very slim ones in the upper part. This is the daytime running light, and this also makes the design, with those twinkling eyes a little bit, and very strong front, very big front grille for such a rather small car still. Overall, a very modern design for sure, and you see they really stress this SUV or crossover elements here already in the front more than others do. 4.16 m or 13.6 is the total length of the Hyundai Kona, or also called Kauai in Portugal, because Kona means something else in Portuguese. Yeah, you can Google that. And then let's take a look at those 17-inch rims. I think they have a good compromise. They have a good, comfortable ride. Still, they look quite fancy. And here you can see the side profile, how large they have put the plastic fenders right here. So some offer some options to have it painted in vehicle color. Some make it, just this thick. And Hyundai decided to make it all the way, also to have a little design differentiation to make it a little bit more unique overall. Well, and then we have a contrasting roof rail there. Overall, here, this way, this part, it's not too much they play with. Design dropping line here. Interesting, this floating roof design. Usually they do it in a glass shadow way, but here also with the matte part. I'm not sure, maybe they could have just left that out and kept it simple, or what do you think? And again, the rear wheel arches are really very thickly accentuated, but unlucky they have then this split here in the door. The rear design looks pretty much hatch-alike, and that's maybe also the reason why they put those crossover or SUV plastic elements even in the lower part again, and also accentuate the lower part right here. With those horizontal drawn taillights, they also have the rather modern look, the very contemporary design approach, which is very present at the moment. So it has a lot of SUV and crossover elements. Will it also drive like that or be more sporty? We will find out in the driving part. And just some preview about the prices. Start at about 18,000, and if you go for the highest trim then with the biggest engine, about 30,000, and the electric engine, or electric motor, sorry, the electric version will be more expensive. But of course, more to that in a separate review. And one important info, this one here is the Trend version. So it's a middle trim level. Yes, we this time had the chance to show you a middle trim version. I always love to do that, not to show you just the high specs. So really good that we have this one here as we have here today. And we'll also find out more about it on the interior. And I can promise you it will be actually quite decent, that you do not have to exceed all the way to the top trim level, because then you can keep closer to the entry price also with this base engine here we have today for you. So today we're driving the 1-liter 3-cylinder with 120 horsepower, front-wheel drive and 6-speed manual, 12 seconds to 100 kilometers or 62 miles an hour. There's also 1.6-liter 4-cylinder with 177 horsepower, then with all-wheel drive and a multi-clutch transmission, then 8 seconds to 100 kilometers or 62 miles an hour. And there soon also will be diesel and the all-electric version. So let's take a look at the interior together. Here at the inside of the doors, they used hard materials also at the top part, but it has a certain structure, and that, although it is hard material, looks a little bit better quality material-wise. Then below that we have some fabric and the window levers and stuff. Actually everything is quite solid. Then some space for bottles right there. Then with the base models and also the middle trim, you also have those fabric seats. They do a very good job. Look quite robust as well. Also with a grey contrast there. And then with the very top trim level, you also get parts in animal skin, but just some parts. Then the steering wheel looks actually quite sporty with the design element there at the lower part. But everything you can see is not a revolution on the interior. But everything is quite practical and solid. Here also the round vents, and again you can see those structured parts there with the surfaces, so that's not too bad. And let's get inside. Well, it is not the highest entry, but it's still a very easy entry. It's not a real high SUV. It's more crossover style from a seating position. You sit a little bit more upright. And I also recommend to use the height function here to pump it up, y'all. And I'm almost 86 or 6'1". If you haven't subscribed yet, that leaves me still some headroom here. Well, there's a little bit thicker here on the side, but still headroom left. And I don't have the seat at the lowest position, because when I put it a little bit higher, it also moves from this position more to a more straight one. And that is better to prevent lower back pain on the long run. That's why I do it. Also, the steering wheel can be adjusted here in all ways, and pretty easy solution here. Works pretty well. So overall, I feel actually quite comfortable here sitting. And I can also, just use the manual seat controls right here also for the back part. I'm totally fine by that. And here we go with the interior. It is also kept pretty basic, all hard plastics and stuff. But then again, I like the surface they have here. You also hear what it is, kind of a checkered surface. It's different, for example, to here. This is rather plain. Very interesting for sure. You can see here the Apple CarPlay connection, and I can also power the car up a little bit more. Interesting that they have a classic approach here also for the climate unit. I think that's good. A lot of people still want to have the fixed knobs for that. Also for turning up or down the vents, and a real volume knob. The steering wheel has a good size and actually quite pleasing. Right side you can control the small menu in the instruments, and for example also the cruise control. And left side the volume or pick up a phone. 6-speed manual gearbox with not much of resistance. Good job. In the lower part here you can put your smartphone, for example, in the top part or in the lower part. Connected here with the cable in the lower part, and two 12-volt power supplies. Then around the gear lever we have the seat heating and also heated steering wheel option if you want so. Great. Manual handbrake and two cup holders. And under the armrest, which is pretty fixedly attached, you have some more room, for example also for your Autogefühl lanyard. Hey, you haven't got one yet? Well, then you should visit the next fan meeting. And the instruments in detail, also pretty classic, right side speed, and in the middle one the small digital screen where you can also see consumption and stuff. The infotainment system you can get in 3 sizes, 5-inch, 7-inch and 8-inch. And from the 7-inch one you also get then the smartphone connectivity function where you put it in the cable. And then with the 8-inch you can also get a GPS. Here we do not have a GPS, we would just use the one of the smartphone. And we, have the smartphone here connected, but by the way, you can also just use the Bluetooth connection. That would also be possible. And the home screen looks like this. You can have this app view, but usually when you go for this version, you just use your smartphone connectivity for everything, and that's it. It also has a radio function, also with the DAB for digital audio broadcasting in Germany, for example. So they kept it pretty simple and basic, but since their GPS software is not the best anyway, I can really recommend just to go for your smartphone GPS, and if your internet connection is good enough. And also very interesting, here the mirror is actually quite large. so you can very well see what you're doing there with your face or with what else. And there's also a light which can be separately turned on here with a small knob. Interesting. What about the rear seats? Getting in is also quite okay, but then, well, that's actually the one weakness of this vehicle. When I'm sitting in the front, I do not fit in the back. So for 4 tall adults, it does not really work. Headroom-wise is okay. I can still put a hand over my head. And the seating position, you know, from the back part here is also pretty upright. That's okay. But the leg room or knee room here, that won't really work for me. It will not be a problem if you're a little bit smaller or if you go a little bit more to the front with this seat. But we have some other competitors which score a little bit better in this respect. But let's see how that plays out for the trunk. And what else? Well, you can flip the seats from here. It's a little bit... There we go. So this one here then is a 1/3, 2/3 split. And I would say, let's check out how that looks like from the trunk. And last info, ISOFIX here for the child seat on the outer seats each. So what about the loading area? This is actually quite long for a small SUV. You see when I put my arm right here. Below here I just have some more space. If you will have the electric version, it will be reduced a little bit in the height. But overall I think it looks quite good. If we then flip the seat, how does it play out? Like this. This is for example the 1/3, 2/3 split. And you can see we have an almost even surface. If I put up the head restraint here in the front, I can get it a little bit lower. It looks pretty good. And if I reach over right here, here we go then with the maximum setup. And I think that looks quite decent, doesn't it? Last try to get the front seat more in the front like this, but this is the maximum setup then. Welcome to the driving part, aka Thomas's driving lounge, the Hyundai Kona. Well, and the big question is, this 1 liter to 3-cylinder petrol turbo engine, is it enough? 120 horsepower. Is it enough for this vehicle? What about the sound? What about the agility? What about the acceleration? And my first verdict is, for city driving, definitely enough. I mean, if you go to 100 kilometers an hour, it's about 12 seconds or 62 miles an hour. And that's a big difference to the 4-cylinder. The 4-cylinder is at about 8 seconds. So it's really 4 seconds difference. That's huge. But then again, for the most driving situations, it is enough. And a lot of people buy this as a small city SUV. And for that, it's quite okay. Also, it has this typical 3-cylinder sound. The strange thing is that those engines with less cylinders sound that as they would be bigger. That's somehow strange. They have a more low frequency sound. You know, for whatever reason. You hear that? No, it's not coming from the motorcycle in front of me. Funny thought though, right? Now we're getting on the motorway to show you some acceleration. It's also going slightly uphill now. So let's see if this is any problem. I'm in second gear now. 40, 50, 60, 70. That was quite okay. Why not? Of course we have to give it some RPM. But not too bad. So now, for example, what about 75 to 100 in third gear? Well, I'm at 70 now, and third gear. 100. So you see that does still work. Actually, no problem. Now to the fourth gear. Let's go even to sixth to see the RPMs dropping down a little bit. Now at 100, just about 2,000 RPMs at 100 kilometers. And noise insulation here at 100 kilometers an hour is quite good, so no problems with that. So the 100 is definitely a good travel speed. Shifting gears through is very smooth, so there's not any harsh resistance or something. The vehicle is also stable here at higher speeds. The steering has a pretty direct response, so it is actually quite sporty. Overall, the car makes a rather sporty impression. It is not that SUV-ish, it is rather crossover-ish. So you would rather than have this one here if you want a little bit sportier, not that high sitting. And from driving, it reminds me a little bit of the Mazda CX-3. Of course, not with the engine, because Mazda is using the naturally aspirated petrol engines. So this one has a more, explosive acceleration. It's not faster in, total terms, but it feels faster. The Mazdas, you have to push the throttle a little bit more, but then they have more displacement. But this is actually really fun to drive and really agile to drive. Wow, look at that. So again, really precise from the steering wheel. A lot of fun to go right and left. Also pretty, you can really exactly steer where you want. Good natural feeling still. The suspension is also not very soft. I think it's a good compromise. Sometimes when you're going over some bumps, it could work a little better, but overall I think they have also done a good job there. So from the basic driving features, how steering, suspension and engine work together, it's really decent. So, from the static impression, it's not really very new, They have it at a good stage. Again, my biggest criticism point was that we should have more room for the rear passengers. But driving-wise, this car scores very well, so it really doesn't disappoint. If you really want more power, or driving with more people, or with a lot of luggage, which I doubt it will happen too often with this kind of car, but if you do that, or if you want that, then of course you can always go for the 4-cylinder petrol engine to have even more power. There will also be diesels available, or also the electric car. Electric Kona we've presented to you earlier in the static review, and I can very well imagine already how it's going to drive in an electric way, and I think this rather sporty setup they've found here will fit to the car very well in the combination to the electric drive too, because then you have a more explosive acceleration as well. This will feel really sporty. So it feels a little bit like a compact hatch, which is a little bit higher rather than an SUV, and I mean that's not bad. The overview to the front is good. To the sides, can't complain either. I can see exactly where the car is ending. Also to those sides there, well, the windows aren't too tall, so this is reducing the view just a little bit, but I think it's still quite okay. Controlling everything while driving, you can easily reach the temperature and also the vent. That's still classic, and I think it's also a wise decision. And then you have the screen where you can access, for example, the CarPlay, which I've mounted here. Then you control everything with that. Also, your personal GPS. You should have a good smartphone connection for that. So what I've actually done here is to give you a positive, sporty driving feeling, which basically serves all different kinds of needs. You do not have to get used to this vehicle, so it's pretty simple to learn. It's, updated in a way. It has, connectivity and stuff, but it's not in a way futuristic or too modern that you would say, oh wow, that's overdone or something. No, it's definitely the contrary. So everything we are seeing and experiencing also while driving is very solid. And I think that's where they really have done a good job. Sales also start very well for this vehicle, and now I can also imagine why, So when it took a test drive, it's definitely convincing. Here again now, countryside roads, heading out, wow, It's really handled very well. And you also asked me, could you maybe compare Kia Stonic and Hyundai Kona? And I initially thought that the Kia Stonic would also be very good, and because it's price-wise also very attractive. It is still, yes. But after having driven this one here now, driving-wise, this one is pretty different. Really, clearly better than the Kia Stonic. I have to say that. So you can only really say that if you have driven both in a pretty short period of time. And you know, what are my other favorites in this small SUV segment at the moment? For sure the Seat Arona and also the Mazda CX-3. So those ones, you know, the Arona has in the front a little bit more room to play with, feels more spacious on the inside, has the best package of all those vehicles, also, you know, with room for the rear passengers. The Mazda CX-3 is also a lot of fun to drive. It drives pretty sporty, sportier than the Arona, and also has this naturally aspirated engine which has this harmonic feel when accelerating. This one here now then, with the 1-liter 3-cylinder turbo petrol engine, rather comes closer in the engine characteristics with the Seat Arona. Because they have the turbo and feels a little bit more explosive, is somehow easier to drive. Sometimes you can stay in higher gears and still accelerate from the, you know, from low out. That's also possible then. Again, I'm really surprised how much fun this guy is. I mean, from the outside it looks friendly and somehow different, also with those very accentuated crossover bars. But it does not promise to be sporty on any kind. But the driving experience proves otherwise. That's of course always nice when we have some surprises. So, what about the consumption? You know, downsizing is not always the solution to score a lower consumption, and well, the same accounts for this one. So, tested it before, now tested it again, and it's always pretty much the same when we have a decent mix of motorway and city driving and countryside driving. I know I did some acceleration, but then again I kept it rather steady, and again I scored about 7 liters on 100 kilometers, and that's too high. Yeah, there was the Citroën C3 Aircross, which was also quite decent in our test, but wasn't so agile to handle, rather very soft with the suspension. Again, depends on what you like better. And that one, for example, we had about 6 liters on 1 kilometer, so also 1 liter less. And that's more like it. I think for such a small car, 7 liters is not the best consumption. I wonder if the 4-cylinder would score better, because you can keep it at lower RPMs when it has more displacement. However, this engine, of course, is still attractive, combining it with the middle trim level, keeping the base price low. Either when you have it as a company vehicle, especially, for example, in Germany, we have this 1% rule, that you take 1% of the total list price of the car per month. You have to pay tax on that one. And so when the list price is lower, you also pay less effectively then. So it's also interesting to keep the list price low of the car. And of course, when you buy it as a private customer, it's of course even better when the list price is low. And you know, some info for German customers, because we recently investigated, especially in this small SUV segment, CX-3, Hyundai Kona, Seat Arona. What about the leasing rate? Well, must be the Volkswagen Corporation. You know, they have also other financing modules, and they offer way better leasing rates than Hyundai or Mazda does. So the smaller importers, you know, they are really small importer organizations in Germany, they often cannot match the prices leasing-wise. And it's really funny, because list price-wise, all those cars here, if you pick a small SUV and equip it very well, you know, with infotainment and assistance systems, then you usually land up at the moment about 25,000 as a list price. but the leasing rates really differ a lot. So I can just stress here again, the vehicle concept. I think those cars are really good, especially for European cities, or maybe also, you know, when you think about East Coast in the US especially, because we have a SUV with this upright seating position. It's a comfortable ride with lower back pain, so I feel better sitting more upright, sitting more comfortable than in a, you know, normal small car or a normal compact car. Then again, the outer dimension, oh, there's an AMG GT convertible. The outer dimensions still remain relatively short, so you have no problems with finding parking space and something. Here, for example, also when cars are passing me now, you know, I can remain totally calm and not stressed at all because, you know, it's not too big here. Everything will fit. It's no problem. And sometimes when you drive a very large car, then you know, does it fit here? Does it fit there? And you know, maybe you don't have a problem when you're living in the middle of a desert and have a lot of open parking lots, but in a lot of cities and where traffic is increasing, this really matters. So the small SUV segment, lots of cars we've been testing here recently, and I think it's really a very interesting segment. And especially this driving part was also very interesting to me here with the Hyundai Kona, and I hope you enjoyed that too. And now to our conclusion for today with the Hyundai Kona. Well, from the exterior, a crossover or SUV style that is really stressed out with those plastic elements. Then from sitting on the inside, it doesn't feel that SUV-ish anymore. Overall, a rather subtle, conservative interior, but it does the job and is actually pretty solid. Also, just go maybe with this infotainment solution with using your smartphone integration, and that's it. I think that's the best solution overall. A little bit more legroom on the rear seats, that would have been nice, but overall I can't complain about anything else there. And the driving was a really good surprise, so this car drives excellent. It's really fun to drive, comfortable at the same time, and definitely among the best in the segment here driving-wise. So overall, I'm pretty sure it's a very hot competitor in this small SUV segment, and I'm looking even much more forward for the electric version. Yes, as Brian has shown you, it has less headroom in the rear. That's a problem, and also, you know, with the trunk height and stuff. But still, from driving it, and also the range that they promise will be very interesting. Well, the petrol engine here today so far. Of course, I would like to know from you guys, what do you think about this car? Yeah, I mean, consumption should be a little bit lower. That was one negative point I forgot to mention. But everything else, I think, pretty convincing result for today with the Hyundai Kona. Thanks so much for tuning in, and also tune in next time, and feel free to recommend Autogefühl.